For the last couple of episodes, you've seen us working on the hull. We've reached 16% of the planking, and when that is finished, we will start to cover the cedar wood with fiberglass and epoxy. Welcome back to a new episode, and let's go into the barn and see what Johan is up to.
So it's time to do another session of ripping and planing, and the plan this time is to rip roughly twice the amount that we did the last time. So I'm hoping, I'm aiming for a yield of 500 meters of strips, and that will take us around 2 feet higher on the sides here, on both sides, to roughly where the turn of the bilge start, where the hull turns inward, where we have that radius, more tighter radius on the hull. And once we're there, we need to make a decision if we're going to go with the thinner strips over that area because of the radius. But that's a decision for later, and for now there's a lot of ripping and planing ahead of us.
Falling apart. It's a beautiful day. Already warm, it's only 8 a.m. in the morning. And we have the lovely smell of animal manure that they have spread over all the fields here. But this is the countryside. Yesterday Johan had a full day of work at the ripsaw and the planer. This is what we have left. This needs to go through the ripsaw and be cut into 3 strips, and then those will go through the planer. But these have already gone through the planer one time, as you can see on these surfaces. And we have a little pile of already ripped strips over there, but they also need to go through the planer. So I guess another full day here to get this finished, and then we can start gluing and planking.
Yeah, that was a lot of ripping. But now we have 550 meters of strips that needs to go through the planer now, so I think that will take the rest of the day.
Yeah, first we're gonna do some cleaning while Johan stands on the planer.
Yeah. Get all this sawdust out of here, because the problem with it is that the hose is a bit too long and it's really fine dust, so it clogs the hose. The dust extractor or the ship extractor isn't very strong, so this is just how it is. So we're cleaning every time we've been ripping to get most of it out of here.
Johan stayed in the barn planing the whole evening to finish all the strips.
So a pretty big pile of strips ready to be scarfed and put onto the hull. And let me tell you, it took quite some time to get this through the planer yesterday, so it feels really nice to have it done now. It's around 560 meters, so this will take us roughly 80 centimeters up on each side of the hull, so quite a bit. Now, some of you guys have asked us about the moisture level in the cedar. And as some of you know, when we bought this cedar, it had been sitting in a barn for over 30 years, those big planks. So when we did the first rip cuts in those thick planks, we did some measurements, and the moisture level was between 8 and 10%, even in the middle of those thick planks. And I think that's because they've been sitting in a dry place for a really long time. I've been checking now on the hull, different places, and it's still at 8 to 10%. So I think with the environment we have here in Sweden, that it should be possible to stay below 12% of moisture in the wood throughout the year. Normally, the winter time is the months with the lowest relatively humidity in the air. And now, coming into summer, it will come up a bit, especially now in May. And then it will come down again for the midsummer months and go up again in August. And then the month with the highest relatively humidity will be in November. But hopefully by then we will have the outside of the hull glazed or fiberglassed, and the hull will be turned over and inside the barn again. And then it will be easier to control the inside of the hull. We can put the tarp over the top of the hull and put some heaters in there if we need to.
What are you doing?
Having a war against the nettles. Removing them and trying to get as much of the roots with them. Trying to make it nice here behind our future guest house, which should be out here. So we want to make a little patio on this side, facing west, into our pretty little forest. Now that it's finally getting warmer, we can start working outside here on the farm and do some jobs that needs to be done, especially with the ground. So last night we had our friend Anders, who works with excavating, and he had a contact where they could get a lot of soil. So behind me are like close to 30 tons of soil that we will use to even out areas here, especially behind me. We have a lot of holes in the ground, so it's really uneven to walk, even in our little front garden. So now it's just lying here, and in a couple of weeks we will start working with that. Anders will come here with an excavator and help us. And we also have another even bigger project that we're going to do out here, and that is to prepare the ground out here on the barn so we can bring out the boat in fall, so we can turn it around, but also to have it prepared for when the boat is ready in a couple of years. As you guys know, this is where we will open up to bring out the boat. But you see the ground is going slightly downwards, so we'll have to raise it a little bit. And it's about, I think it's about here, right? So the ground has to come up to around this level, because that's where the floor is inside the barn. So we're going to open up, cut here. It will be a 5-meter wide opening. So the ground has to be raised up to there and then even and flat. So we'll use gravel and all the materials or stones and whatnot that you need to make this really hard, so it can take both the weight of the hull. When we're going to take it out after the summer, it will weigh around 2 to 3 tons. And then when the whole boat is done and we're going to bring it out to take to the sea, it will weigh around 10 tons, and that's without the keel. So in just a few weeks we're going to start this job, and we're pretty lucky because the ground here on our farm and the surroundings is really dense clay. It's like a clay mud, and so when it's dry it gets super dry and really, really hard. So the size of the area that we're going to make here will be 15 meters long and then 7.5 meters wide. So it will go to around over here, right? So we can fit the whole boat here. And for this opening here, we are thinking of making sliding doors instead of the other ones that we have, because it will be much easier to open, less windage. So we think that will be a good solution. And we might also replace this sheet metal with real wood in the future. But I think for now we'll keep it. So that will be the upcoming projects outside here on the farm.
Yeah, as you can see, the pile of cedar has dropped quite a lot since we started to plank the hull. I'm hoping that we can get another 800 to 900 meters of strips from this pile. And that means that we're missing around 300 to 400 meters of strips to complete the hull. We have known this the whole time, but I thought it was a bit less. What we're missing is around 4 to maybe 5 of these, and before I thought it was maybe 2 to 3 of those. And the reason it's a bit more is because I hadn't factored in the waste from the scarf joints really, which is quite a lot. But I told you guys before that we might have found a place where we can get this missing cedar at a reasonable price, so I'm not too worried about that. But I'm also playing with the thought that maybe we should get another type of wood for the missing part of the hull, because this is in the keel area. The missing part is like an ellipse in the bottom of the hull where the keel will sit. So the weight of the timber really doesn't matter because it's well below the waterline, it's close to the keel, and maybe it's a benefit to get a more dense wood, a stronger wood, to plank the hull in that area. So I'm playing a little bit with that thought. Maybe we should have oak there or some other species. But maybe you guys have some ideas about this. Let me know what you think we should do. I told you guys before where we found this wood, in that barn sitting there for over 30 years. But another cool fact is that this wood is from the island of Haida in British Columbia in Canada. A really beautiful area, cruising ground in the world. We sailed there with round 1 a few years ago, and we really loved it there. And we hope to go back someday with round 3. So it's a pretty cool coincidence that we have sailed in this area. This wood was logged there many years ago, sitting in a barn, just waiting for us to find it so we can build our future dream boat, and maybe we can go back to that area and maybe to the island of Haida. That would have been so cool.
Maybe not the smoothest move of strips. With the ripping and planing done, Johan could start making the scarf joints and glue them together. This is the fun stuff, where you see a quicker progress. Nature is exploding at the moment. This is what the forest looked like a week ago. And this is now. If you enjoy our videos, we would be so happy if you joined our Patreon crew. A big thanks to everyone who supports our production. Take care and see you next week.